My name's John Kieffer. I'm the creative director of Sound and Music. I started working in January, and my job is really to pull together the whole of the programme. That's across all of the events we might be involved in, which would include live performances, installations, and so forth, and also working very closely with the learning team. So we're working in a kind of multidisciplinary kind of way on the programme. Sound and Music was brought together, was a merger of 4 organisations, the Society for Promotion of New Music, the Sonic Arts Network, the Contemporary Music Network, and also the British Music Information Centre. So all broadly organisations involved with contemporary music, experimental music, sound art, and so forth. My background before that, immediately previously to working with Sound and Music, I was working mostly as a consultant, but also as an advisor to people. So I was kind of working freelance. I also worked with a couple of companies. I worked with a company that's based in America called AEA Consulting, where we were working with a range of different arts organisations. And I worked with a company which was called Double Shot Consulting, is now called Unthinkable. And the work I did with them was around digital strategies for organisations. So working with arts organisations, trying to think through less, I suppose, of the technology, but more of what approach they would take to using the whole realm of digital and new media and broadcasting. I suppose also relevant, I mean, before the period of freelance, I was head of music and director of performing arts for the British Council. And that was, I suppose, the whole time when the whole digital domain started to really kick in. It was around the turn of the century and so forth. And one of the things I did while I was there was commission a weekly radio show for the council, which was called The Selector, and so it is called The Selector. And that was an interesting kind of decision, really, because that was the first time when we decided not to use the internet. And it was a kind of long discussion, really, because the obvious thing at this point would be we were going to do this weekly show, and we wanted to get a big audience for it, was to actually just stick it online and stream it. And we decided not to hold off on that for a couple of years, because what we wanted to do was to really use it as a tool to negotiate regional and local deals internationally and actually have more of a conversation with people. So we made a conscious decision not to, and it was quite controversial at times. People saying, "Why don't you just stick the thing online?" And we thought, no, actually, let's think about it a bit more and think about what we could do with it. So we spent 2 years really trying to get it rebroadcast locally, which was very successful. And now, in fact, the show is now streamed as well. So it's got 2 platforms, if you like. It's got a live kind of platform locally, but also it's being streamed at the same time. I mean, I think the whole notion of bringing kind of experimental and contemporary music to a wider audience, you've got to give people some help. So we're talking about stuff which is often unfamiliar and also sometimes quite difficult. So, I mean, I think the notion of building as much content around the delivery of live performances or education programs is really important. So we've got a very integrated, what we hope is a very integrated strategy to that, in terms of actually trying to work on the best content we can possibly provide. And we started to build that around some of the new projects. So that's one aspect, and in a way that's quite traditional, I suppose. That's expanding what you would do in terms of traditional marketing and contextual information. But also we're very keen to look at the whole digital domain and trying to see how we use it. And we've just come straight out of, actually, had a week at a school called Tuke School in Peckham, where we had a load of programmers working together on basically making low-cost, accessible applications that could be used in an education setting for music. And it was like a hothouse, really. And the last week was the kind of was the raw creative stuff, and a whole load of stuff came out of that 1 week. So it's actually not so much looking at high-end digital, but how people can, particularly in school setting, could use the stuff they've got in the school to actually and use that digitally. The next stage of that is to move to see which ones we want to develop and then move beyond that. We actually produced an iPhone app last year, actually, called Lunasonic, which is it's a free iPhone app. We work with Goldsmiths on that. And it's to visualize sound for people who haven't got any hearing or are hard of hearing. So that was like a very small pilot. This one's a bit bigger than that. So looking at that element, also looking at what we can do in terms of doing projects that are purely online, in a sense, don't necessarily have a representation in terms of a live event. Again, kind of quite a lot of it's information based. So we're looking at elements where we can actually have, we've got an idea for a project which is called I Just Don't Get It. And the notion behind that is that we provide very, very short, accessible, almost kind of clip length kind of videos about areas of music. So it could be, I just don't get Stockhausen, or I just don't get sound, whatever. And we have somebody speaking to that, and hopefully use some animation to make that kind of more interesting. So I think, it's about, it's not saying we do this, if you like, we do, full form videos which are on paid channels, or we just do YouTube clips, or we just do this, that, and the other. It's actually thinking, and also kind of taking a risk. I mean, the whole notion of, it's probably not as simple as this, but sometimes you have to give away your best content in order to create interest in your organization and monetize the things that you're not going to monetize. Sometimes you won't, but sometimes you will. And I think it's, as much as the technology is permanently in beta, I think the whole world of thinking about this is in beta as well. You have to try things out and not lock yourself into one approach or another.